Artificial starlight glowed softly in the massive hall of stars. The dome-shaped ceiling made it look like a wide, open skydark with fake moons and drifting clouds of light. This was the ceremonial chamber of the Council of Sovereign Systems, a place of power beyond the galaxy's core. Around the central stage were circles of tall, golden thrones, each belonging to a different species that had fought its way into galactic importance over time. Some thrones pulsed with energy, others floated, and a few shimmered with glowing lights or gave off strange scents, but everyone's eyes were fixed on the center stage, waiting for the last guest to arrive. The Brook High Chancellor, an insect-like being, clicked his mandibles and scratched his armored cheek. Typical mammals. Probably lost their map, he muttered. A wave of laughter, sharp and crackling, spread among the outer species. Even the old members, draped in robes, allowed a thin smile. Earth wasn't taken seriously here. Many didn't even consider it worth noticing. To most, it was just a backwater planet that somehow found its way into galactic affairs with a strange mix of cheerfulness and polite talk. They call that a strategy, growled Zara, a scaled war priest from the Dominion of Visa. Always drinking that hot bean water, always bringing that hot bean water, always bringing snacks, always smiling. It's unsettling. Then, the human delegate arrived. No music, no guards, no fancy entrance. A lone woman stepped onto the stage, tall and calm, with no weapons, dressed in a simple dark blue diplomatic outfit. Silver threads ran through the fabric, and on her chest was a small emblem of Earth, a laurel wreath around a chess piece. The monarch. The room went silent, not out of respect, but out of confusion. She stood in the center and slowly looked up at the council, like a teacher sizing up a noisy classroom. Her face was framed by dark wavy hair, her expression soft and kind. And when she finally spoke, her voice was warm and smooth, like melted honey. Honorable leaders of the galaxy, she said. Earth sends greetings. Apologies for the delay. We got caught in traffic. The star lanes seemed to be full of warships today. A pause, a cough, a few alien snorts. It wasn't clear whether they were amused or irritated. Clarissa stood calmly, hands folded at her waist, not nervous, not rushed, just waiting. And that, somehow, was even more unsettling. Let the human speak, came a mechanical voice. The Moor's ear had spoken. The High Chancellor slowly rotated his crystal-like eye. Allow her to explain. Clarissa nodded with a polite smile. We are here to discuss the recent attacks in the Mid-Orion Corridor. Humans, like many of you, have noticed unusual fleet movements and rising military actions by the Central Hegemony. Earth has come to suggest a path of peace. Desera, a warlord, snarled. Earth should suggest silence. You've barely escaped your own gravity in the last 30 years. Clarissa smiled softly. True, but we've seen you paint targets before. The real question is, have you ever fired a shot? And then the Galactic King stood up, or rather, unfolded. Zetherin, king of the Oric Ascendancy, a towering being of perfect, yet unnatural symmetry, his 7 eyes rotating in a slow spiral. From a crown of glowing light and bone, the king's voice echoed from every wall at once. Execute escalation. Insects and borrowed boots, that's all you are. Your species makes fire, then fears its own warmth. Clarissa tilted her head slightly. Better to fear warmth than to worship flame. Earth isn't here to start a war. You're wrong, Zetherin said, his tone shifting. We don't want war either. We just don't fear it. Then, a strange rift appeared in the sky above. The air in the chamber shifted, like the sudden chill before a storm. The polite words were done. Now, the truth stood bare. The council was divided. The hegemony wanted war. Earth had come ready for it. With a soft click of her boots on the black stone floor, Clarissa took one step forward. Zetherin's 7 eyes locked onto her, curious now. So, Earth has a question. The king mused. Clarissa's voice was calm. What will you do when the species you underestimated has already seen every move you'll make? A sharp hiss came from the corner. A wiry creature sneered. Humans are too sentimental to kill. Their threats are empty. Clarissa smiled gently, her tone like velvet. We teach our children to play before they can spell. We write wars into our stories. We joke about death. We mourn villains as much as heroes. Do you know why? She didn't blink. She didn't smirk. She only smiled a small, wrinkled smile. Because we don't run from contradictions. We don't fear complexity. We learn to hold both truths in our hands. Even over breakfast. Now tell me, where are your ships? Where's your courage? Where's your so-called threat? Zetherin snapped his fingers. Clarissa shifted slightly, making a barely noticeable hand gesture. Above them, the artificial stars shifted, rearranging themselves into glowing human letters. The entire hall fell silent, but Clarissa didn't even glance at the message. She already knew what it said. You dare threaten us here? The king roared. Clarissa answered softly. If it's already too late, is it still a threat? Zaya, a council elder, moved closer. Explain yourself. Clarissa didn't rush. She calmly approached a small pedestal in the center of the room. From her coat she pulled out a small object, an earth relic, a snow globe. Inside, a miniature volcano sat frozen in constant eruption. She placed it gently on the dais. No, she replied calmly. I bring it as a symbol of our restraint. We thought you might notice. The room went quiet, not out of fear, but out of focus. Clarissa wasn't pleading. She wasn't here to beg. She was in complete control, every move calculated. Enough theater. One of the delegates shouted. Call the vote. Earth's insolence must be punished. Clarissa didn't move. She remained steady. Zetherin's crystal eyes spun slowly. Anything else before the council decides your fate. The lights dimmed. The artificial sky above turned blood red. Silence filled the chamber, but it wasn't from words, it was from weight. From gravity. A realization dawned. This was no moon. Clarissa now stood at the heart of a cloaked warship, the Midsommar, a diplomatic vessel, or perhaps a tomb, depending on the council's next choice. Then, from the shadows, a figure descended the stairs, dressed in silver gloves and a pale cloak. He wore a grin, the kind of grin that only comes from someone who's already read the last page of the book. The council members gasped, even Clarissa, as if they had just realized they were still reading a book whose final page she had already written. Her eyes flickered, controlled but alert. The man stopped 3 steps away from the center. Director Hale, Clarissa whispered. He nodded with a slight bow. Apologies for the interruption. I was enjoying the monologue. Hale's grin widened like a secret unspoken. Zetherin growled, his voice cutting through the tension. Who are you? Hale glanced at Clarissa. Should I send them a message? Clarissa didn't blink. Not yet. Then, in a voice as soft as a feather, she asked, if we agree, if we sign, what happens, and if we don't? She added, looking up. The artificial starfield above shifted again. New symbols appeared. FE2 is ready. Clarissa's gaze swept the room. No eye, synthetic, organic, or alien, escaped her quiet stare. She nodded, just slightly. Then, with the gentlest press of her hand, she tapped the small volcano inside the snow globe. It erupted. Of course, it was only glass and swirling white flakes. Yet no one in the vast hall was breathing. The silence was crushing. It was the kind of quiet that comes just before something unthinkable happens. Beneath the fake sky, behind the cracked glass and frozen ash, a storm was already building. Clarissa's smile didn't change. It stayed soft, polite, and terrifyingly calm. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their golden thrones. Translation devices glitched, their voices skipping. Whispers, encrypted and frantic, filled the space. Zetherin's mechanical limbs vibrated with barely contained fury. Zara, the war priest, reached for the ceremonial blade but froze, realizing the ceremony was already over. Next to the shattered snow globe, a small datapad blinked. Pale blue light flashed twice. Final vote pending. Clarissa exhaled slowly, as if calming a frightened child. Then Zetherin moved. We believe in peace, Clarissa said gently, but only if you believe in consequences. From his dais, the Oric king rose, his body glowing and twisting, his limbs vibrating with rage. He moved in a blur, faster than the eye could follow, slamming into the central pedestal. 7 eyes blazed with furious light. Delegates scattered like leaves in a storm. No human could understand the complex colors of his rage, but Clarissa didn't flinch. You dare, Zetherin roared, to demand from the Ascendancy. His screams shimmered in sharp prism-like hues. Clarissa tilted her head slightly, calm as ever. I don't make demands, she said softly. Then she stepped aside. Zetherin's strike shattered the pedestal into sparkling fragments, but the snow globe was no longer there. It was in Clarissa's hand again. Glass shards rained onto the marble floor. The datapad cracked apart, but Clarissa was already moving, not dodging, but as if gravity itself was guiding her somewhere important. Dot in a fluid motion. She reached into her right boot and drew a blade. Its edge curved like a crescent moon, dull-colored but alive with purpose. The blade was almost invisible until it caught the light. No energy, no advanced tech, just steel. Pure human steel. Dot in one smooth motion, Clarissa slid it beneath Zetherin's left third rib. The king froze. Gasps exploded across the chamber like fireworks. He looked down, stunned, as the blade vanished into him like a whisper slipping through fabric. His mouth opened, but no words came. Only a faint, musical chime escaped his throat. Then his shimmering body began to flicker. Unsteady. Clarissa stepped closer, her voice so soft it made the glass tremble. The left heart feeds your anger, she said. That's the one I needed to stop. She withdrew the blade. No blood. His species didn't bleed, but his glow dimmed, fading like a dying star. Suddenly, security drones flooded the air, spinning spheres, sharp spikes, buzzing with energy. Half of them aimed at Clarissa. The others hesitated, unsure. And then, from across the hall, others stood up, not soldiers, but people hidden in plain sight. Stewards, interpreters, aides. They didn't draw weapons, but their stance was clear. Not an army, but choreographed precision. Earth hadn't sent a military force, it had sent experts in controlled violence. Director Hale stepped down the final stair. Well, he said with a tired smile. She drew first blood. That was the moment Zara lunged. The war priest roared in fury, charging at Clarissa, but she was already moving smooth, fluid, like water flowing around a rock. Her shadow reached Zara before she did. With a twist of her boot and a pivot, she brought him down, disarmed him, and pinned him to the floor. Humans are soft, Zara spat, breathless, through a cracked jaw. That's the trick, Clarissa said, crouching over him. We bruise easily, but we don't break. Zetherin's limbs trembled as his voice faltered. You planned this, Hale answered before Clarissa could. No, we trained for it. Every meeting, every word we were studying you, mapping your flaws. Above them, the artificial starfield blurred once more. Earth's ships emerged from the shadows small and flawless, surrounding the council. They hadn't fired a single shot, but every exit was sealed. Planetary defense systems scrambled to respond. They failed. Years ago, Earth had quietly planted its own codes inside shared medical data, repurposing, rewriting, adapting not to destroy, but to control. Clarissa stood tall once more. Her tone was colder, now not angry, but exact, the tone of a judge, delivering balance. You asked us to change, she said, and we did. Because evolution doesn't favor strength, it favors strategy.